might just be the title as well. I don't know if you can put ho in the title in YouTube, but let's check it out. Hi guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Sneha, and today I'm doing some non-fiction book recommendations. Bit of an unusual video for me because I don't really tend to read a lot of non-fiction, but thanks to the non-fiction November theme that's going on around, I thought it might be a good video idea to film a few books which honestly are easy to read, very informative, very powerful, and are also readable for fiction lovers such as myself. So that's what I'm trying to aiming to do. This year in particular, my non-fiction reading goals have failed utterly, spectacularly, and how. So I am owning up to it, but I also have a list of great books over the years which I've read, which I absolutely love, and I want to share with you. The first book that I want to recommend is Hunger, a memoir of my body by Roxane Gay. I think I read this book earlier in this year, and I think I talked about it in a wrap-up video if I'm not wrong. I'll link that up and down below if you want to check it out. But this is a memoir from Roxane Gay, who's a very famous writer. She talks about how her journey with her body has been throughout her life. Particularly one incident that really affected her relationship with her body was when she was brutally raped at a very young age, and she started looking at food as kind of like a defense mechanism to kind of make her body into a fortress to avoid such trauma from happening again. That was her way of dealing with the trauma that she went through, and over the years, and now she's at a place where doctors have termed her morbidly obese, and it's also really she's not at a very healthy place. So that's why she kind of wants to take back her narrative. She wants to take back her authority on her body and her self-worth, and she wants to talk about it as openly and freely as possible. This book does not mince any words. It's very brutal, it's very hard-hitting. She speaks completely with candor, and because of that, it's also very easy for you, also for the reader as well, to relate to her, even though you might not have had that kind of traumatic experiences that she's had. But I think at some base level, almost every woman maybe, would relate to this book, because all of us, I think, have felt uncomfortable with our bodies at some point, or that we don't fit into society's definition of what a woman is. For every such instance, this book relates resoundingly with you, and you feel it in your bones when you're reading her words, because A, she does not mince any words, and B, it's also really like stark language. So the impact on you is just like 100x. So I absolutely love it. The next book that I want to talk about is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I think I talked about this book in my audiobooks recommendations video. I'll link that up and down below. Do check it out. But I think that this book really does deserve a second shout out, because absolutely essential reading is what this book is. But anyway, this book is about the Stanford sexual assault case where Brock Turner assaulted a woman who was termed as Emily Doe in the courts, and he was actually, there was a lot of evidence against him, there were a lot of witnesses, and he was sentenced guilty. However, the judge was lenient on him, and he gave him only a 6-month sentence, and in 6 months Brock Turner was a free man. The victim's impact statement went viral on social media, and for all the good reasons, obviously, and it led to this massive movement that eventually overturned the sexual assault regulations in California, and also recalled that particular judge who made that judgment. So it had a very wide-reaching impact. The victim's name is Chanel Miller, and she's finally disclosed her identity. She's taking back her narrative, and this is her account of what happened on the day of the assault, after that, during the case, and the aftermath of all of this that she had to go through. She writes beautifully, powerfully, and also I was listening to the audiobook, so she is reading her own words, and because of that, I think the impact is even more, because you can hear the pain in her voice when she's talking about details of her life which will forever be changed because of this incident, and you can hear the anger and you can hear the frustration in her voice when she's talking about about her assaulter, because he is now a free man, and when you're reading about it, you just it burns you up. It details out just how many ways the system is designed to make a sexual assault victim feel powerless, feel vulnerable, and feel raw. And it just incenses you in a way like nothing else that I've ever read or listened to. It took me so many days to finish this book because I had to stop at so many different points to just take it all in and just try to rein it in, so to speak. But absolutely beautiful book. It's a memoir that deserves its place in the best memoirs that I've ever read, and I would highly urge you to read this book if you haven't already. The last memoir sort of a book, it's part memoir actually. It is On Writing by Stephen King. This book is actually part memoir and part a writing guide. So in like part one, he talks about his own life, his own experiences, and then the second part shifts to his process of writing, his tips and tricks for the trade, how he thinks other people write, and just his overall experience of being an author. I think no matter which side of the fence you fall in, arguably, I think Stephen King is one of the most successful commercial fiction writers of all time, because just look at the number of books that he has churned out during his lifetime and just look at the massive success that he has achieved, right? So there is so much to learn from him about the art of writing, but also his life is also so interesting. So he talks about growing up in not a very well-to-do background. He had to cut a lot of corners growing up and in his first job and as a young married man. Then he hit success as a writer, and then he talks about his troubles with addiction, and he also talks about this very infamous near fatal accident that almost took his life. And then he kind of seamlessly moves on to his tips and tricks. So he talks about how to use grammar, how to use sentence structure, how to make characterizations which are appealing to the audience. So it's just really useful. So if anybody is ever wanting to be a writer who wants to get some ideas and some tips and tricks, this is one book that I would definitely recommend. It's really easy to read because he writes almost in like a candid manner where he's just laying it all out on the paper, and it's really fun to read. So it's easy for you to follow and actually implement as well. It's not like 36,000 up in the air kind of language. So it's very easy to read. So if anybody is planning to be a writer, do read this book. If anybody wants to learn more about Stephen King, do read this book. It's a great one. The next book that I want to recommend is Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. Matt Haig is a fiction writer. I think his recent work was The Midnight Library, if I'm not wrong. But this is a non-fiction account of how he has navigated his depression, how he has navigated his depression, anxiety, and suicidal tendency. It's basically a look at how he has coped with these issues all his life and how it has actually impacted his work, his relationships, and his entire personality. Apart from his own account, he also brings other people into the book, other famous people who famously have had these issues as well, and how it has impacted them and how they have dealt with it. And he also brings into account like normal regular people and how some tips have helped them as well. So I think I read this book right at the beginning of the pandemic last year, when the world was opening up to this conversation of mental health and how social isolation can actually lead to mental health problems in the long run for a lot of people. I also personally was not doing very well. I was anxious all the time. I had my low moments for sure. And at that point, reading this book kind of felt like a warm hug, because I'm not one for self-help books. I find them too preachy. I don't think that they're worth the money that they earn. But this does not feel like a self-help book, because he's just talking very openly about what worked for him, what helped him, and it feels like he's just offering help instead of like shoving help into your face. So that's why I really this book really struck a chord for me. It just makes you feel not alone. I think that's the beauty of this book. It talks about other people also having dealt with certain problems that you might also be facing, about how they have dealt with it. Just gives you a feeling of companionship, and at that particular point of time, maybe I needed to feel that, which is why I really loved and empathized with this book so much. He highlights just how important it is always to have people around you who also understand mental health and who also offer help instead of deriding you of the condition. So again, in today's day and age, when there is still a stigma attached to mental illnesses, very mandatory reading for everybody, because it just offers a softer lens to the entire conversation, and I think it has the ability to make people empathize with other people, which is just the most beautiful thing. The last book that I want to recommend for this video is quite different from the one I just talked about. It is Bad Blood: Secrets and Lies in Silicon Valley Startup, and this is written by John Carreyrou. This is kind of like a true crime journalistic book. I don't know how to classify this book, but it details the story of Theranos, which is a Silicon Valley startup started by Elizabeth Holmes. The entire basis on which the company was founded was that just from a prick of blood you'll be able to run a whole host of diagnostic tests, which currently is not the case. You need like vials of blood to run diagnostic tests, but this company promised to change all that and just take one tiny prick of blood for like a host of tests. Elizabeth Holmes was the founder of this company, and later on it turned out, and they were really successful. They got a lot of venture capital. It was backed by a lot of politicians who were on the board as well. The technology that they promised that they have created did not exist. It is not possible to run diagnostic tests with a tiny prick of blood. You need volume to run these tests. So basically it was an entire farce with actual real life consequences, because there were people who got tests from this company done, and they were either inaccurate or they were completely false. So this entire thing came to a head when John Carreyrou, who's a writer who's working with the Wall Street Journal, he started investigating the company, and he discovered that it was a facade of sorts, and he wrote an expose, and it eventually led to the downfall of the company. I think Elizabeth Holmes is in jail right now, and he came out with this book detailing the story of Theranos, of Elizabeth Holmes, and how he himself uncovered the entire story. This book I think I would recommend because it's just so wild that this one woman has managed to convince so many people that a technology exists when it did not in the first place, that there was an entire company which went along with the lie. There was entire like really powerful people who believed in this one woman and her idea, and like backed it up with like funds and access to power, and just it's insane. It makes for really insane reading. It reads like fiction, so that's why I think it's a great recommendation for fiction lovers like myself. But please read this book because it exposes a side of Silicon Valley which I think is underreported or underwritten about, because there are a lot of ethical lapses which happen in these companies which I'm sure never see the light of the day. But this one of course went to a completely different level, but it's really interesting to see the investigative aspect of it as well. And yeah, that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have managed to stick around for so long, it means the world to me. Do like, share, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.